So you want to make a ton of money as early as possible and have some control over your income. Totally understandable. In this video, I'm going to break down the nitty gritty of SaaS sales or software as a service sales, or otherwise known as tech sales. Talk about what works, what doesn't, the ins and outs of the role, and this is a perfect, almost part two, if you will, of my how to make 200K in your 20s video. All right, so I think there might be a misconception out there. So let's just start with this: that most people think SaaS sales is just hopping on Zoom calls, working remotely, giving demos, and just closing deals. That's maybe 20% of the job, maybe less, depending on your situation and what's going on. The reality is, it is actually very high pressure, unpredictable, and honestly, a lot of people wouldn't last a year doing it. That's not to discourage you. Plenty of people do. It's just, I don't want you to think it's quote unquote easy money. If you understand how it really works, you can make a boatload of money doing it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what SaaS sales actually is at a high level. I don't think I got too much into this in my first video, which is how to make 200K in your 20s, but let's break it down a little bit further. So SaaS sales is not just selling software, right? That sounds super simple and straightforward. You're not necessarily selling features, right, or dashboards and all this cool stuff, and you're not just feature selling and pointing out bells and whistles, right? You're selling outcomes, results, okay? So value selling. You're selling increased revenue for the company or the CFO, the CEO you're talking to, reducing their costs, time, efficiency, so metrics. This might save you 100 hours a week, X amount of hours a day, etc., or a competitive advantage in their industry. So most of your job is not actually even selling necessarily, right? It's finding deals, it's prospecting, it's managing your pipeline and those deals, keeping deals alive. And I'm sure maybe you haven't, but you're going to hear something a lot if you get in tech sales, or any sales probably, which is time kills all deals. The actual closing part, that is the more fun / easy part of the job if you've done everything else in the process correctly. Okay, so starting to break this down further, prospecting or looking for connections, looking for deals, looking for opportunities, that is everything in this role. So if you take one thing from this video, it's this. Top SaaS reps are not just better closers. They have more opportunities. They're building more opportunities. They are creating more at-bats, to use a baseball analogy. That all comes from prospecting. Cold calls, industry research, emails, LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, Zoom Info, all these different softwares connecting with people. And a lot of reps hate prospecting, which I don't blame them. It has its ups and downs, right? Depending on your territory, your quota, the industry segment you're in, all of this stuff, the types of businesses you're working with, SMB, which is small to medium businesses, mid-market, upper mid-market, enterprise, etc., more strategic accounts. So it's very difficult, right? Prospecting is what you should probably spend most of your time doing if you look at a day-to-day. If you're not good at prospecting, if you don't have a process down and a schedule and a routine, you're going to just have to rely on inbound leads, people calling in, people emailing, people asking you, and waiting around, right? That's not how you're going to stay in the industry. That's not how you're going to make a ton of money. Most places don't have a huge amount of inbound lead flow. You have to actually go out there and master outbound and make it happen. If you don't do that, you're definitely going to miss quota, and the top performers are going to be building their own pipeline constantly and controlling their income. Okay, let's get into why SaaS sales or tech sales pays so much, right? Comparatively to other industries and jobs. Obviously, that's what draws people into SaaS sales. You've got your base salary component. That's what you're guaranteed to make. Then you have your commission. There's usually some type of split, like 50-50 is very common. So you would say you make 100 grand as a base. If that's a 50-50 split, then your on target earnings or your total compensation would be 200K, meaning half of your money comes from base, half comes from the commission. If you hit your quota number or on target, that should add up to 200,000 in the scenario we just talked through. And then you have accelerators. So most companies have some type of accelerator program, which means once you get or exceed your monthly, quarterly, or annual quota, you get an extra percentage on top for each deal you close. That's where you can get into crazy numbers, like 400,000, 500,000, or even over $500,000. I mean, there's some $1 million W-2 earners. It's rare. That's the upper echelon. It takes many variables It takes many variables working together correctly for that to happen. So I don't want to overhype that, but it is possible. And like I said, once you hit quota, the accelerators are really what get you into that crazy income. In my best year, when I made it to President's Club and I overexceeded and I closed over $1 million, those accelerators are really what get you to that next echelon, if you will. Because remember, once you hit accelerators and you're past quota, every deal that you close pays you even more. So another thing I think to hit on here is deal sizes, right? Depending on your segment, you could be working with $10,000 deals, $50,000 deals, or even $500,000 deals. Sometimes, they might take the same amount of effort. It depends on all of the specifics, your buyer personas. Are you selling into IT, marketing, or the office of the CFO, finance people? All of these things will affect your sales process and how things work. You're still going to need to call people. You're still going to need to be a people person, so to speak. But you're going to need to have a really specific process that you use, right? Once you nail down the process, that's something you can replicate. And that's something that you can use to be successful in the future. If you're just throwing everything at the wall every day and you don't have a system, you're not organized, you don't have call blocks scheduled on your calendar, prospecting time, you're not going to be successful. And SaaS sales, to answer my own question that we started this with, why does it pay so much? It pays so much because these are hefty amounts of money that you're moving around, right? So, think about it. You could, in a lot of roles, maybe sell $1 million of net new ARR, annual recurring revenue. So I closed $1 million of deals in a year. So you're generating a lot of value. Because you're generating a lot of value, you're going to get paid more. All right, this video is already taking longer than I thought because I have a lot of thoughts and things to share, so I'm going to try to expedite this. Let's talk about the reality of the day-to-day. So we've talked about the high pay, how hard it is, the intensity, the unpredictability, quotas, kind of how things work, right? There's a lot that goes into it. SaaS sales is not easy. You have a quota every month, every quarter, and every year, right? It resets, right? Even if you did really well last month, your sales manager, your leadership's going to be asking, what are you doing this month? Where are we at, right? It doesn't matter if you crushed it last year or last quarter. You're back at zero every month, every quarter, every year. It resets. Deals slip, budgets will disappear from your buyers, your decision makers or DMs might go silent on you, and people are asking you internally, your boss, your leadership, where's the deal at? Is it closing? There's a lot of pressure. It's constant pressure all the time. And if you can't handle that, you're not going to last long in the space. Now, transitioning, let's talk about why deals or opportunities die, right? Most deals, I would say, don't die because of price necessarily. That's what I think a lot of new reps think. Deals die because you're talking to someone you shouldn't be talking to, right? Maybe you don't have a qualified buyer, right? Maybe it's someone who doesn't have decision-making power. It's marketing. Maybe you need to be talking to the chief marketing officer, but you're talking to a marketing manager or an end user versus the person who controls the budget. Maybe there's no real pain, right? We haven't even gotten to sales methodologies like MEDDIC or there's all sorts of things we could talk about. But if there's no real pain, there's not going to be any real urgency. If there's no real urgency, the customer or prospect doesn't have a reason to move forward. If there's no true decision maker involved, there's not going to be a purchase, right? I think the biggest thing that kills all deals, in my experience, is doing nothing, is no decision, right? No decision. So that's what stalls most deals in my experience, right? And that's what will destroy your progress, right? If there's no real pain, urgency, or a real decision maker or purpose involved on the buyer side, they're not going to move forward. Nothing's going to happen. And that can be worse than a no, because maybe you've wasted months chasing something that was never real. And that's why qualification, making sure this is a real deal and you've hit all your check marks, is so important. If you don't have the pain, budget, authority, timeline, you don't have anything. And a funny acronym, I think it's funny, that salespeople use is, you'll hear this a lot, is BANT: budget, authority, need, timeline. That's crucial to have a good understanding of that in all of your deal cycles. So what compels a VP of finance or a VP of IT or a chief security officer to buy a technology for their company? What is the psychology of buying? Because this is something I think a lot of people miss. People don't necessarily buy something because it's good, right? There's all sorts of high quality enterprise software out there. There's lots of competition and a lot of places people could go to get that software or to buy that outcome. People purchase, in my experience, because they're afraid of making the wrong decision, right? Risk, I would say, is a huge factor in SaaS sales. So think about it. If you're a VP signing a $100,000 ARR contract and it goes wrong, that's your job on the line as the VP, as the customer, as the prospect. So your job as a salesperson isn't to sell harder. It's to reduce risk for your prospect or your customer. It's to make their life easier. You need to make that CEO, CFO, CTO feel safe, confident, and certain. And that's how the deal is actually going to get closed. You might be asking yourself, what separates kind of the pack from the top reps? So I'd say the best SaaS or tech sales reps have a few things in common. They follow up relentlessly. They do not chase bad deals. They don't lie. They don't harass people. They take control of their pipeline and their opportunities, and they take accountability, responsibility, and ownership of everything, right? Everything you can control, you should be controlling, right? Control the controllables. Everything else is out of your hands. And here's a hot take for you. I think charisma is overrated, right? Consistency and a process is going to win every single time. Alrighty, folks, if you made it this far, I really appreciate you watching and supporting a pretty small channel at this point. If you could do me a favor and subscribe if you're not already. If you like content like this that's focused around wealth creation, personal finance, investing, making money, tech sales, etc., and just how to get better in general, we cover a variety of, I would say, development topics. That would be awesome, and thanks for watching. So I'm going to pivot and give you a quick example before we wrap up here. Just so you can kind of understand some realities of the industry. I've personally had deals where I thought they were completely dead, no follow-up, no responses, no movement of any kind, and boom, out of nowhere, your decision maker gets back to you over email, or they send you a quick text, or they call you on your phone, and boom, they want to move forward. That's awesome. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And I've had deals where I thought we were 100% guaranteed. We had executive buyers involved, all of these different people, end users, we had support, and boom, at the signature phase, it's fallen apart because an owner that wasn't involved, anything can happen, right? Things that were 100% like verbal commit from the decision maker, and boom, it falls apart at the last second. And I just want to point out that that is the nature of the beast. You can never assume anything until it's done. So if you're thinking about getting into SaaS sales or you're already in it, I would just understand that it's not about being the best talker. It's not about being the most charismatic. It's about discipline, consistency, and controlling your pipeline. Because at the end of the day, more opportunities gives you more at-bats, which turns into more deals, and some of those deals will close. More deals is equivalent to more money, and that's the game. Thanks for watching, guys, and good luck.